Breaking tonight, U.S. stealth bombers have struck deeply buried nuclear facilities in Iran, including the fortified Fordow enrichment site, using massive...
15 years. That is how long two people spent studying the inside of a single mountain. Not climbing it, not photographing it, memorizing it. Every tunnel, every vent shaft, every layer of limestone and granite and poured concrete that Iranian engineers had buried beneath the earth like a secret they believed no one would ever dig up. 15 years of obsession, for a mission that would last less than 25 minutes. On the morning of the strike, at 4:11 a.m. local time, in a classified operations center 7,000 miles from that mountain, a fictional senior analyst named Dr. Lina Ferraro set down her coffee and watched 7 aircraft indicators blink across a darkened screen, moving east in total electromagnetic silence. She did not blink either. Before this story ends, you are going to understand exactly what those aircraft carried, how that mountain was supposed to be invincible, and why every assumption about what happened inside it was wrong. This was not a bombing. This was an autopsy, performed on a fortress that was still breathing. And the thing that made it possible was not a weapon. It was something found on a server 6 months earlier, in a room that had nothing to do with Iran, in a building that did not officially exist. To understand what fell from the sky that night, you need to understand what was buried beneath it. And to understand what was buried, you need to go back almost 2 decades. The digging began in 2006. Not with explosives. With patience, Iranian engineers carved horizontally into the northern face of a mountain near the city of Qom, boring 5 separate access tunnels through solid rock, each lined with over a foot of reinforced concrete, each converging on a central enrichment hall buried nearly 300 feet below the surface. Above it, 80 to 90 meters of granite and limestone. Below that, a shell of steel ribs and poured concrete so dense the ground-penetrating radar returned nothing but static. The air inside those tunnels was climate-controlled. The power supply was redundant. The ventilation shaft, nearly 8 meters wide, rose straight through the ridge and was capped with blast-rated doors that could seal in under 4 seconds. Iranian generals did not call this facility protected. They called it invulnerable. And for a long time, by every conventional measure available, they were right. The most powerful bunker buster in the American arsenal at the time could penetrate maybe 20 feet of hardened concrete. Fordow's engineers had given themselves a 10-fold margin. Every press briefing from Tehran carried the same subtext, spoken sometimes aloud and sometimes only with a smile. No bomb on earth can reach us here. That was the dare. What they did not know, what no one outside a locked room at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency knew, was that 2 people had already accepted it. Her name, in this story, was Dr. Lina Ferraro, rock mechanics specialist. 12 years with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, an office most people in the Pentagon could not find on a building directory, much less describe. Her colleague was a fictional Air Force officer named Lieutenant Colonel David Asher, whose doctoral thesis on penetration dynamics had been classified before the ink was dry. Together, they built what internal documents referred to as a Fordow target dataset. It was not a report. It was a living map, a 3-dimensional digital replica of that mountain, updated every time a seismic reading shifted, every time a satellite caught a thermal plume rising from the ridge, every time an IAEA inspector filed a quarterly measurement that revealed a new centrifuge cascade spinning faster than the last. Ferraro knew the density of every rock stratum between the surface and the enrichment hall. Asher knew the angle of entry required to avoid the reinforcement ribs and find the fracture lines the mountain itself had created over millions of years of geological pressure. They did not study this mountain. They lived inside it. And what they concluded, year after year, variant after variant, was that no existing weapon could do the job. Not yet. The physics kept failing. The mass was never enough. The casing crumbled on impact simulations. The fuse detonated too early or too late, shredding rock above the target and leaving the vault untouched. So they kept building. Variant A. A steel dart, 30,000 pounds. Maximum penetration, 78 meters of granite. Not enough. Variant B. Titanium alloy nose. Shaped charge liner. Broke 90 meters in simulation. Closer. Still not enough. Variant C. A new kind of fuse. One that could think underground. A radar altimeter bouncing microwaves off layers of rock in real time. Fused with accelerometer data through a radiation-hardened microprocessor, calculating its own depth to within 30 centimeters as it plowed downward through the earth. 30 centimeters. The length of a shoebox. That was the margin of error for a bomb trying to hit a room buried under a mountain. By the time they reached Variant G, the version that would eventually fall, the weapon weighed 30,000 pounds, carried a tungsten carbide composite casing that could survive impact forces strong enough to collapse a bridge, and possessed what engineers quietly referred to as adaptive terminal intelligence. A bunker buster with a brain. 15 years of engineering for 25 minutes of use. But the bomb was only half the problem. Because a weapon means nothing if it cannot reach the target. And between the sky and that mountain sat something the Iranians believed made the entire question irrelevant: a wall of missiles. And that wall was about to develop a crack that no one in Tehran saw coming. If the engineering behind that weapon just shifted something in the way you understand the story, stay right here. Because what comes next is the part that was never meant to be made public. Hit like, not because this channel needs it, but because this story needs to find the person who is sitting somewhere tonight and still thinks that mountain was untouched. Do not leave. The next 90 seconds will reshape everything you just heard. At 3:47 a.m., 6 months before the strike, in a building at Joint Base Anacostia Balling that carried no external signage and required 3 separate badge clearances to enter, a cyber forensics analyst named Tomas Ibanez sat motionless at a workstation on the 4th floor. Ibanez had spent 9 years decrypting foreign military communications for the Defense Intelligence Agency. His colleagues knew him as the quietest person in the building, a man who processed catastrophic intelligence the way an ER surgeon processes a sucking chest wound, quickly, silently, and without letting anyone in the room see his hands shake. His hands were shaking now. On the screen in front of him was a signal intercept, routed through 3 separate proxy servers, stripped of metadata, and buried inside a maintenance log for an Iranian civilian telecommunications company. It had been dismissed twice by automated filters. Ibanez found it on a manual sweep at 2 in the morning because he was not looking for what the filters were looking for. He was looking for silence. Specifically, he was looking for gaps. Moments where Iranian military communication channels that were active 24 hours a day went suddenly, inexplicably dark. Not jammed, not encrypted with a new protocol, simply turned off. As if someone on the Iranian side had decided, for reasons unknown, to create a window. An invisible window. And embedded in that silence, compressed into a 4-second burst transmission hidden inside a civilian bandwidth allocation, was a set of coordinates. Not geographic coordinates. Frequency coordinates. The specific radar frequencies used by every S-300 PMU, 2 battery and every Bavar 373 node defending the corridor around Fordow. Ibanez stared at the data. He ran the decryption twice, then a 3rd time. Then he picked up a phone that connected to exactly 1 office, and he said 6 words that would set the next 6 months in motion. Someone on their side is helping. The operation that followed was given a designation, not a name anyone would recognize. Not something dramatic, a quiet word, chosen specifically because it would not draw attention in a server log. Project Stillwater. And Project Stillwater was not a bombing campaign. It was a deconstruction. The air defense network around Fordow was not a single system. It was a layered architecture, Russian-built S-300 PMU, 2 batteries with 200-kilometer engagement ranges interlocked with Iranian-manufactured Bavar 373 units carrying phased-array radar and long-range interceptors. Together, they created overlapping kill zones across the entire corridor. Any aircraft that entered that airspace, stealth or not, would face detection, tracking, and engagement from multiple angles simultaneously. On paper, it was ironclad. But paper does not account for what happens when someone inside the network provides the exact frequencies that make the iron transparent. In December of 2024, according to this fictional account, Israeli F-35s conducted a series of nighttime incursions into Iranian airspace. The strikes were precise, not aimed at Fordow itself, aimed at the eyes surrounding it. 300 surface-to-air batteries, 4 Bavar 373 radar nodes on the Tehran plateau. Some destroyed outright, others left standing but degraded. Their radar horizons cut from 250 kilometers to barely 120. Tehran's official statement was immediate. Air defense remains fully operational. Internal maintenance logs, intercepted by Ibanez's team, told a different story. The radar blanket that had once covered every approach to Fordow now had a seam. A corridor. A path that did not exist 6 months earlier and would not exist 6 months later. 4 American strike planners. That seam was everything. And the aircraft designed to exploit it was the only one in the world that could. Go back to the beginning of this story. Go back to the number, 300 feet of granite. When you first heard it, that number sounded like invincibility. A fortress buried so deep that nothing in the sky could touch it. Now you know about the fuse. The one that calculates depth in real time, to within 30 centimeters, while plowing through solid rock. That 300 feet is not a shield anymore. It is a runway. Listen to it again, and hear it differently. 7 B-2 Spirit bombers. Tail numbers that exist only in this story. Each one a flying wing with a radar cross-section smaller than a seagull, less than 1/10 of a square meter on any detection system ever built. Each one carrying 2 GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrators in its internal weapons bay. 14 bombs, 30,000 pounds each. 420,000 pounds of precision-guided tungsten and high explosive, aimed at one mountain. They launched from a base in the continental United States. The flight was long. The refueling was mid-air. The silence was absolute. 2 of the 7 aircraft split off over the Pacific, broadcasting false transponder signatures toward the Korean peninsula. A feint designed to pull satellite attention and signals intelligence eastward, while the remaining 5 slipped into the Turkish corridor on a heading that would take them across the Iraqi border and into Iranian airspace from an angle the degraded radar network could no longer cover. The deception held. While Iranian radar screens painted phantom contacts over the Caspian Sea, the real strike package crossed the border at altitude, invisible, carrying enough ordnance to reshape the geology of a mountainside. 25 minutes to target. In the operations center, Dr. Ferraro stood behind a console and watched the indicators crawl east. Beside her, Colonel Asher had his arms folded, eyes locked on a seismic monitoring feed linked to sensors in Colorado Springs. If the bombs reached their target, the Earth itself would confirm it. 14 bombs, released in pairs. The first 2 struck the ventilation shaft, the 8-meter-wide column that ran vertically through the ridge, and blew the concrete cap off its mouth like a cork from a bottle. The next pairs burrowed deeper, each one riding the fracture path the previous detonation had carved, each one smart fuse recalculating depth in real time as it descended through shattered rock and bent steel. The seismic monitors in Colorado registered a sharp tremor. Magnitude 4.2. Not an earthquake, a verdict. Commercial satellite imagery captured within hours showed a fresh crater 45 meters across where the ventilation shaft had once been. The mountain's northern face bore new scars, long diagonal fractures radiating outward from the impact zone like cracks in glass struck by a stone. No Iranian interceptors launched. No surface-to-air missiles fired. Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from naval assets in the Gulf, had blinded the remaining radar installations in the minutes before the B-2s arrived. The bombers were ghosts hitting a target that could no longer see. In the back rooms of a monitoring station 8 time zones away, 19 intelligence analysts sat in silence, watching the seismic data resolve into a picture that confirmed what 15 years of engineering had been built to achieve. Ferraro did not move. Asher exhaled once. Then he sat down. No one in that room spoke for nearly a full minute. The mountain was open. If you are still watching, you already understand that this is not a story about a bomb. Drop the word 15 in the comments. You know why. Subscribe, because what this channel covers next makes this look like a prologue. And send this to one person tonight who still thinks that buried means safe. Everything you heard in the first half of this story, every description of that mountain's defenses, every boast from a general's podium about invulnerability, every layer of granite and steel that was supposed to make this target untouchable, go back, listen again. Because now you know about the frequency coordinates. Now you know someone inside that network opened a window. And every layer of defense you heard described was already transparent before the first bomber ever left the ground. The strike on Fordow did not exist in isolation. It was, in this fictional account, one node in a larger architecture of pressure that extended far beyond a single mountain in a single country. Analysts mapping the fallout, strategic, not radioactive, traced the implications outward like fracture lines from the crater itself. If a facility buried under 300 feet of granite could be reached, then every underground installation on the planet had just been downgraded. North Korean tunnel complexes bored into the mountains near Kangi, Chinese strategic reserve facilities beneath the Taihang Range, Russian command bunkers in the Ural Mountains. Every one of them had been designed under the assumption that enough rock meant enough safety. That assumption died in 25 minutes. The Massive Ordnance Penetrator program, all 7 variants, from the crude steel dart of 2011 to the adaptive intelligence weapon that fell on Fordow, represented not just an engineering achievement but a strategic message delivered in seismic waves. There is no depth that guarantees immunity. Iranian state media responded within hours. The facility was described as operational. Damage was called cosmetic. Enrichment would continue. But IAEA inspectors reported something different in the weeks that followed. Access requests were delayed. Monitoring equipment that had been functioning was now offline. And the centrifuge cascade counts, which had been climbing steadily for years, stopped being reported altogether. The silence said more than any press conference could. On the deepest partition of a server seized during a parallel intelligence operation, one that had nothing to do with Fordow and everything to do with Project Stillwater, analysts found a single encrypted document. It had been created 3 years before the strike. It had been updated quarterly, and its contents described not a contingency plan, but a blueprint. A blueprint for relocating the entirety of Iran's advanced enrichment capability to a new site, deeper, farther from any known border, beneath a geological formation that the document's authors believed would resist even the weapon that had just been used. Not a response to the strike, a prediction of it. Someone inside that program had known, years in advance, that the mountain would eventually fall, and they had already begun building the next one. The arms race had not ended. It had moved underground, permanently. Somewhere in this story, there is a family, not a military family, not a political family, an ordinary one, A mother in a small apartment on the outskirts of a city she has lived in her entire life. A son who was 23 and studying engineering because he believed that building things was better than breaking them. He was not in the mountain when the bombs fell. He was 2 miles from it, on a road, at the wrong time. The seismic shock from the strike triggered a rockslide on a hillside road that had been considered stable for decades. 3 vehicles were buried. 9 people died. His mother learned about it from a neighbor, not from a government official, not from a news broadcast. A neighbor who had seen the footage on a phone screen and recognized the car. She does not know about Project Stillwater. She does not know about frequency coordinates or smart fuses or 15 years of engineering. She knows that her son left the house that morning and did not come back. That is the cost that does not appear in any operational briefing. The cost that no satellite image captures. The cost measured not in craters or kilotons but in a phone that rings in an empty apartment, and no one is there to answer it. Entire communities near that mountain lived under the fiction that the facility above them was a research center. They sent their children to schools built in its shadow. They bought groceries from markets that existed because the workers at that facility needed to eat. Their economy, their rhythm, their daily lives, all structured around a lie that sat beneath a mountain and hummed with centrifuges they were never told about. When the strike came, those communities did not experience a military operation. They experienced an earthquake with no warning and no explanation. Power does not always arrive as a bomb. Sometimes it arrives as a decision made in a locked room 7,000 miles away. A calculation on a spreadsheet. A probability assessment that weighs collateral damage against strategic necessity and arrives at a number that someone signs off on before going home for dinner. And by the time anyone on the ground understands what happened above them, the aircraft are already gone. The screens in Colorado have already confirmed the seismic data. The briefing has already moved to the next slide. Federal and military sources, in this fictional account, maintain that the strike achieved its objective. The mountain was breached. The enrichment hall was exposed. The cascade was disrupted. But the deeper question, the one that no briefing answers and no satellite resolves, is whether cracking a mountain made the world safer, or whether it simply ensured that the next mountain will be deeper, the next facility harder to find, and the next generation of weapons will need to be even more terrifying than the last. The arms race does not end. It just digs further down. And for the people who live above these places, who raise children and drive to work and have no say in what is buried beneath them, the ground they walk on is never quite solid. It never was. They just did not know it yet. This story is fictional. The warning inside it is not. The names are invented. The pattern is real. If this reached you, let it reach further. Like this video, leave a comment, share it with one person tonight who needs to understand what happens when the word invulnerable meets 15 years of patience. Subscribe, because the next story goes deeper than this mountain ever did. And remember the people who live above the targets. The ones whose names never make it into the briefing. That is why this story exists. Every name, every official, every character, and every event in this story is entirely fictional, created for dramatic storytelling purposes only. The agencies, weapon systems, and geopolitical dynamics referenced draw from publicly available information and documented real-world concerns. The story itself, including all operations, discoveries, and outcomes described, is not real.